Ciao, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Personal PR Show. And today we're here with business consultant Marc Campbell. And we're going to talk about how to sell with love and responsibility as well. Hello, Jason. Welcome to the Personal PR Show. How are you?
Jessica, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing well. As I was telling you just before we went live, I am on the road today, so I happen to have one of the most comfortable setups for this conversation. But nonetheless, I'm excited to share, and I'm going to make sure that everybody might have a change in perspective about sales by the end of this conversation.
Wow. Yes, we really can't wait. And this is a treat. So thank you so much for making time for us while you are on the road. May I ask you where you are right now in the world?
Yeah, so I happen to be in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And what happened is I found myself actually moving to Kuala Lumpur a decade ago. And I work for this organization called Mind Valley, which I have a feeling you're quite familiar with. And maybe some of you listeners also are. Personal growth company. I wanted to come and join them and kind of see what happens when you apply a lot of the marketing and sales methodology that I already knew inside this world. Had a blast doing it, but I moved away to Bali a few years ago. And the reason I'm here now is because me and my partner, we signed up to one of those Spartan races, which are these like obstacle courses. And it's happening at the beginning of May in Kuala Lumpur. What most people might not realize is it's not a flat city. It's actually a mountainous city, and there's some hills everywhere. So it felt like the right place to be in a city, to do some hiking and some training in the mountains and in the extreme humidity as well. And so I get to spend some time here, and that would be the reason why I'm in Kuala Lumpur.
Wow, amazing. How long have you been doing this? What's the name of it? Spartan races?
Yeah, they're Spartan races. So it's basically like a few kilometers and a lot of obstacles. And I've been doing this since 2018, I believe, 2018 or 2017. And yeah, the story behind that for today, I think what's most relevant is for a lot of times we might set some goals like a New Year's resolution, like, oh, I want to lose a bit of weight or I want to gain a bit of muscle. And when I went through a goal setting process for myself, I said, well, what's one thing that if I do this once a year, I have no choice but to be in shape? Because if I'm not, I'm going to die. And so the Spartan race is like my litmus test to make sure that I'm always in good shape, because I know a race is going to be in the calendar. And I think that's one of the biggest motivators if you want to achieve something, is to put together something you need to achieve by a certain date, and all the habits line up into place because you have no choice.
You have no choice. Exactly. Oh my God. I always say you don't know how strong you are until being strong is your only option, right? Yes. And so it's great like to create like this high pressure environments that have to hold you accountable. Certainly I function the same way. So I totally recommend that too. That is great. But my question is now, Jason, how did you get started with, talking about selling with love? What was your the trajectory? Oh my God, it's such a difficult word to say in English for a foreigner. Trajectory that led you to this point in your career, because you're doing wonders. You're helping so many people with sales, because this is something that a lot of people find difficult, or maybe even, sometimes repulsive as well. So you managed to completely shift the perspective. How did you get started with this?
Yeah. So, coming back to now is the fact that, I've put out a book, which is about selling with love. I host a podcast that's all about selling with love. I bring experts on sales and make sure that they get to share what sales is really about. And I've noticed that the majority of us have a huge misconception and blocks when it comes to selling. I've noticed that most adamantly in the personal growth industry. I've noticed a lot of people that are either consultant, coaches, kind of in a service type of business, having this struggle or this like aversion with sales. And I remember I was in the office, and this is at Mind Valley, and I would be talking with my, another man on the sales team, and we'd be talking about, hey, okay, we have a few follow-ups. I think we'll be able to collect some more money, maybe make a couple $100,000. I think we should raise the ticket prices so that we can maximize revenue. That means we get to reinvest into these events and making the best experience. And I've noticed how uncomfortable people were about raising prices, being like, oh, I don't know if we should raise prices. And the fact that we would be talking about sales strategies and techniques, people will be like, oh, I don't know, but don't be too pushy and all that. And I felt quite strange about it. I was like, well, we deliver an incredible event. And if we can have strategies in place to make people understand the value we want to provide to them, we need to be using that. This is the way to show love to people, is to actually use the language that is necessary for them to understand that if they make this purchase, it's in their best interest. I hadn't heard anybody speak of this in the same language. So I happened to give a talk to my colleagues at work. We had this auditorium within the office, and I shared this concept about selling with love. And people came to me, they're like, I've never thought of sales that way. And I'm like, huh, I don't know why, but I always found myself in a scenario where I enjoyed sales. I love communicating with people. I love to explain the partner. I would get some excitement. They would get excited when I'm selling, and then they buy the product. I'm excited. They're excited. This was a great journey. This was a fun journey. I'm like, why is it that nobody has this relationship with sales like I do? Had some early childhood sales event that actually led to some of my first, well, led to my first girlfriend, but that's another story. Nonetheless, I had this foundation where I'm like, hey, sales is great. I shared this idea about selling with love. People are like, wow, this is amazing. And so I realized, like, wow, all the most ethical businesses, like people that are mission driven, are impact driven, that care about the difference they make in people's lives, are the ones that are the most afraid to sell. That
Yes.
doesn't sit right, because what you do is you open the market to be marketed and sold to by manipulative people that don't care. And that's left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth. And the problem is now the good people that need to sell are withholding, retreating, and not able to sell at their fullest, which means the bad guys win. And I want to change that.
Totally, totally. I always talk about this phenomenon as well when it comes to PR and when it comes to visibility, because sometimes like the loudest people are the ones that get the sale and so on, right? Exactly. It's very similar between sales and of course PR as well. Wow. So, and I think that you picked the right industry. I mean, as you have just said, there could be no better industry for this type of work, because I mean, this industry, usually when we get into it, like especially for coaches and spiritual people, is because we really want to help people, right? We want to, and we have these gifts and we have this education as well, and we're ready to help people really transform their lives, because what gets produced is real transformation, like deep transformation. But then they're afraid to sell, right? That's, yeah, that's an oxymoron in itself, but that's true. And this is where you come in, and it's perfect. So I know that you're doing it with heart, but from a strategic point of view, this is perfect as well. Right? It makes so much sense.
Yeah, no,
So
it is unfortunate to see, because again, we could label this as light workers. Like, my God, there are problems in this world and consciousness needs to rise up. And if you
yeah.
speak particularly under the lens of PR, is that if you're doing something incredible, if you're out there trying to help raise consciousness, you're out there really trying to support people to grow the work that you do, you know that what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return, then yeah, PR is a beautiful tool that you need to be using, need to be maximizing, because then you don't get to be a victim of saying, well, nobody's giving me attention, nobody's trusting me. Rather, you can embrace it, which is the same language that I talk about in sales, which is, are you speaking the language that other people need to see, need to hear, so that they can understand what you do? Because we understand what we do. Communication is one of the hardest things to do. And so are you packaging it in the right way? Like, I don't know if you've ever had a birthday, Jessica, and imagine someone's like, hey, yeah, you know what? I wanted to eat with you. I wanted to make you a nice dinner. So here's a piece of raw steak, and I put a recipe with it. And yeah, it's a really expensive piece of steak, so cook it right, and happy birthday. You'd be
Yeah.
like, what the hell? And you'd be like, why doesn't this person appreciate the gift? This was a Wagyu beef. It was the most expensive filet mignon. Why didn't they appreciate it?
Yeah.
It wasn't packaged right. Because if instead you set the table, light some candles, you grill the steak and you make it at the cut. I don't know if you're vegan. If you are, then I'll say it's a cauliflower steak. And again, if you want to understand who you sell to, then that's a big aspect, because if you bring a steak to a vegan, probably not the best of things. So again, a couple things that you can unpack there, like, are you packaging it right? Are you presenting it in a way that they will best see it as something valuable? And you're still serving the same piece of meat, but you're packaging it different. So is that manipulation? No, it's empathy. And I think PR plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, thank you for shedding light on the key when it comes to messaging, which is communicating in a way that is empathetic and it makes it relevant for the other person. Absolutely. And I do have a question about sales but I'm going to ask it to you in a second, because first I need to ask you about PR. You've talked about PR so eloquently, and certainly you have experience. Like, I know from your bio that you have experience, but people watching us here in the personal PR community will be able to tell that you know a lot about PR anyway, without knowing what your bio is, right? So, how did you get started in PR? I saw that you launched like a few things, products and books, also very successfully in New York. Would you like to tell us more about this? Because I mean, this is the community is going to, you know, to love anything that you have to say about PR.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, similar to how I signed up for the Spartan race kind of puts me in the habit of needing to learn everything. Here I am in Mindvalley, and I was kind of known, my job title was very fluid, but somebody gave me a title that I think was actually quite appropriate for what I did at Mindvalley. I was the Swiss Army knife. And although that seems violent, but don't worry, it was a tool not for violence, but for fixing things. I would be thrown into these different areas where we weren't too sure what needed to be done, but someone needed to figure it out. You couldn't build an SOP of a process you didn't understand, or standard operating procedure. And Vishen Lakhiani, who's the founder of Mindvalley, had just started writing his first book, Code of the Extraordinary Mind. And they had started hiring some experts all around, and what they needed was an internal PR person. Well, lo and behold, they turned to me and they're like, Jason, can you do the PR for the book? And I said, I can figure it out if you have faith in me to figure it out. And they said, yeah, go figure it out. And a big thing that I do, and this might be a tip for everybody here that goes beyond the PR, is if you're given a large task and responsibility and you don't know what to do, it's not about figuring out the what, it's about figuring out the who. And as such, I went, okay, who's the most amazing person that knows PR that I can learn from and shortcut this learning process in a beautiful way? Unfortunately, Jessica, I didn't know about you at the time, and I don't think you were doing PR back in 2016. But luckily, there was a man that I did identify, and I use a platform. It's called clarity.fm. I don't think it exists anymore. I'm not sure, but you could book an expert by the minute. And so I found the most expensive PR expert, and I booked him for 23 minutes. It cost me a couple $100. And as such, they said, here's what you have to do. At the time, what we did is he said, go on Google, find a list of books that are similar to that book and look at people that have already written articles on books that are similar, then find out who they are, reach out to them, ask them if they want to get a copy of the book, if they want to read. And of course, this was before ChatGPT or any of that fancy stuff, but I was still able to build a ton of automation. I hired someone to be my personal assistant to go and do that task. I documented it all, automated it, created templates that would pre-populate on Hubspot. So it would say, hey, first name, I read your article in insert newspaper name with a title of insert title of their article about insert book reference. And like, it was so customized, but automated that I ended up reaching out to 600 journalists in 2 days. And it was all personalized. And so I have an article actually on how I did this step by step that's published on the HubSpot sales blog. So if anybody's interested, I could post a link to it.
We absolutely need to explore that. Absolutely.
So
yes, certainly.
That was my first instance with PR. And yeah, we got it featured on all sorts of magazines. I got him in Forbes. I got him on Inc., Huffington Post. I had a few other micro niche articles that went out. So yeah, and then became a New York Times bestseller book. So that was the extent of how I figured out PR. But like, again, I think the key thing here from this is just like, okay, cool that I figured out a couple of these things, but when I don't know what to do, you figure out the who.
You figure out the who. Absolutely. There's a book that I started reading or listening to the other night, and it's called, maybe you've heard of it, it's called Who, Not How. So basically, just what you said, right? It was written by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And
I know Benjamin. I've interviewed him.
Really? Have you on your show, right? You've interviewed over 200 people. Yeah, exactly. So I love that. Absolutely. And would you agree? Actually, I think that you do, given what you have just said. But I always say that PR is actually not that intellectual. Like, it is intellectual. Of course, it's good if you go to PR school and then you learn about sociology and psychology and so on. It's very useful. But at the end of the day, PR, to succeed in PR, you have to be street smart more than book smart. Would you agree?
Well, I wouldn't know the alternative, but I definitely feel like the street smarts happen to be quite effective. And I guess one of the things I would highlight in being successful. So even if I think of that article of going like 600 journalists templated, but kind of customized, still a bit generic. And my God, I get bombarded with people that want to be on my podcast that send these generic messages all the time. It's annoying. So, hey, go back. Everything's good until marketers ruin it. I was at the beginning of doing this automated reach out. So it wasn't that spammy at the time. And I thought I added enough personalization to not make it spammy. So I think that's important. But now more than ever, I think when you talk about street smart is going to be really caring about the individual that you're reaching out to and like establishing that one-on-one connection, because it's not about getting 1,000 people to say yes. It's about getting that 1 to 10 and actually putting some effort into it. So yeah, that's one thing. The other side of the street smarts is that sometimes the initial phase, like, because you have to kind of pierce through the noise, right? And I find that sometimes it can be quite exhausting individually putting a ton of efforts for a lot of no's. So I do try to find tools that can accelerate that first layer of touch point. And this is where, where do you draw the line on using automation and being personalized versus being efficient is something you have to check with your own values. And to me, I definitely feel that, hey, if I want to be able to get my foot in the door with someone relevant and I'm going, say, the, spaghetti on the wall approach, which is just like throw some spaghetti everywhere and see where you can make those first connections. Sometimes that is necessary at the early stage because it's so much effort you need to put in every single one that I will use like the first touch point, try to find the most efficient way to do it. And then the moment that there's like an indicator of interest, then you go and really research and put the effort into the people that respond. I think there's a bit of a juggle to do there.
Yeah. Oh my God, I can confirm myself as well now. You are a Swiss Army knife. And this is said by somebody who has been residing in Switzerland for 17 years.
Fair enough.
Oh my God, they would give you the citizenship. You wouldn't have to wait the famous 10 years to get the Swiss citizenship. They will give it to you immediately because you're so resourceful and strategic and so on. And so practical as well. This is what I like about your approach. Super practical. Oh my God. Yes. I know that we are approaching the end of our conversation today. I will talk to you forever. So if you want to come back to the Personal PR Show, you're always welcome to. I know that you're very busy, but let us know whenever you want to come back. But I do have one last question for you, Jason, which is, can we maybe take a couple of minutes to explore the connection between sales and maybe high ticket sales and accountability? I'm going to tell you something about this, like super quickly. I love masterminds. I'm in a lot of masterminds. I work with a lot of mentors and so on. And one of them was telling a story in which there was somebody who said, yeah, I'd love to join your mastermind, but I can't afford it right now. Could you please make me a discount, right? And then she said, no, I'm not going to make you a discount. And I'm actually not going to make you a discount for you, right? Because if you don't pay or if you don't pay enough, you're not going to pay attention, so to say, right? So basically, you're not going to have enough skin in the game and the stakes are not going to be high enough for you, right? So is this something that you talk about as well? Basically this connection between accountability and, sales or high ticket sales?
So I haven't extensively spoken about it, but I'm very familiar with the concept. I mean, I've witnessed it in my own behavior. You get a gym membership at a discounted gym and you go once a year versus you go to that premium gym of excellence and you're paying like Equinox, like $500 a month. And you're like, I better show up to those classes because I'm paying so much money. So we've probably seen that same way as if you're buying some like expensive food and you're like, I'm definitely going to be cooking this. I'm going to make it special. Versus letting things go to waste. So I think there's definitely a psychological element there. One thing I would say is I think that the industry has also been a bit predatorial with that concept in the sense that I've seen a lot of masterminds and high ticket offers that are predicated exclusively on the high ticket price and not necessarily with the delivery of the product and service. So there's one thing that I speak about in my book extensively, which is the concept of selling with love is when you know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return. That's what selling with love is all about. And so, yeah, you want to sell a $10,000 program, you're going to deal with $10,000 people that are solving $10,000 problems. Are you offering a $10,000 plus product experience, handholding, and deliverability? Because you can probably get away with getting a little, agitated with selling at a high ticket, but maybe not delivering. And a lot of people are probably going to be forgiving you. But if you want to build something that lasts, that really is going to build scale, you'll be happy sleeping well at night. I think you shouldn't forget that part. And you have to be ready to deliver value. You know, there's an equation that I speak about in my book, which is you start with cost. There's a cost of your services, and then there's your price of your services. The cost is based on what you include. So you have full control of what the cost is, what it is that you offer, because you can modify the product or the offer as you want. You also have control over the price because you're the one who can basically say, here's the price, ta-da. But of course, your price has to be higher than the cost or you're out of business. The next variable is actually perceived value. And perceived value is what people expect the value to be. And just like you said, is when the price is high, the expected value, kind of like a bottle of wine. If you see it for $100, you expect it to be good, but you could share and sell a terrible wine for $100, and it could only work for so long, you know? So, okay, you have your perceived value. It needs to be higher than the price or people aren't going to buy it. So that's where your marketing and your sales effort and the way you tell stories and the way you structure your PR, that's where it actually really makes the perceived value go up. But there's another variable that people need to pay attention to, which comes after perceived value, which is real value. And something to keep in mind about real value is, number one, it's only detected once the purchase is found or is completed. So once the client has the product in their hand, that's when they're going to experience the real value. Yes. And so the second thing is the real value is different for every single customer. Because if I'm selling a $10,000 sales coaching program for someone who hasn't done their first sale, don't buy my program. It's not worth it for you because I can increase your sales by 10%. Well, if you're making $1 million, then if I increase your sales by 10%, you're making 100,000 more. You should be buying my $10,000 program. Same offer, different client, real value changes, right? So our efforts that we want to do whenever we're in PR, wherever we're in sales, is to be able to identify exactly who we want to serve and understand them fully. Like loving your client is all about how you understand them, because the more you understand them, the lower the risk is that when you go and sell to them, that they're going to get a real value that is less than the perceived value. Yes. When you start realizing, wow, this makes 100,000 for that client, of course I'm going to sell it all day for 10,000. They need to buy this. Then you can be ecstatic, enthusiastic, relentless, pushy when you're selling, because hey, I want to unlock $100,000 of value in your firm. Let's get started.
Yes. Oh my God, this has been amazing, Jason. This is really, really a treat. And now we all have to read your book, because you gave us so much, but at the same time, I'm like, you wrote a whole book about selling with love. So it's like probably we just scratched the surface, or this was just the tip of the iceberg, right? How can we find it, like on Amazon and all of the retailers, right?
Yeah. I mean, anywhere you look for Selling with Love, you will find me. Even where you look for Jason Marc Campbell, don't forget the Mark, because there are a lot of Jason Campbells. But yeah, it's available everywhere. Matter of fact, if any of the people that are listening to this right now, I think it's on Facebook. If you find Selling with Love or Jason Marc Campbell, just come and connect with me in any way that you find me, and just say you heard of me on this conversation, and I'll send you the first chapter, as well as some meditations that allow you to connect with your buyer persona. So when you sell, you truly are heart to heart connected. Just send me a message and I'll send that over their way.
Oh my God, can I send you a message as well, Jason?
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear that meditation.
You'll be the first one to get a set.
I'll be reaching out very, very soon. Thank you so much. Wow. We went over by 3 minutes. I know that you had a hard stop 3 minutes ago, so thank you so much for staying with us a little bit longer. And anytime you would like to come back to the Personal PR Show for some more conversation about selling with love, PR, or whatever, then
this was a joy. So definitely, if you want to have me back, I'll come by. I'll be in Canada next month, and that might be a better time zone for me to jump in. So just send me a message, and well, once you went through the first chapter, then maybe we'll have to have some more conversation after that.
Totally. Yeah, we'll have so many more questions after the first chapter and after the book as well. I'm going to read the whole book, certainly. Wow. Thank you, Jason. We'll see you very, very soon here on the Personal PR Show. In the meantime, have fun, and we wish you lots and lots of strength for your Spartan race in KL, Kuala Lumpur, very soon at the beginning of May.
Much appreciated. I hope everybody got what they were looking for, and it was a pleasure to share. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Jason. Take care. Bye. Bye-bye.